Hello everyone, I'm Rainbrat, and welcome back to another quarterly book reading update thingy. It's like halfway through July, so I'm a little late on this, but I've been having moving stuff, and I also wasn't quite done with my last book at the end of June, so I finished that book before. I wanted to finish that book before I did this. But this year, I am doing every 3 months-ish. I am reviewing all of the books I've read. I did one for the first 3 months, and I read 8 books. And I read 8 books the last 3 months too. That was April, May, and June. For the last video, I did it in my blanket fort, which was really cool and cozy and stuff, but I had to take that all down because moving. And I also had all of the books with me, but I don't because they're all packed away because moving. So I'll put the not screensaver. Why is that the only word I can think of? Give me a minute. The cover, the book cover. I'll put the book covers here so you can see them. I have my list. I just pulled them all up on my computer so I can actually see, because I'm gonna forget what all they were because of 8 books. Okay, so in the last video, the last one that I had read was actually the first book of the Discworld Death series. And so, rolling off of that one, I went into the second book, which is Reaper Man by Terry Pratchett. Here. Now there are 5 death books, and like I said, the first one was on the last video, so I'm not going to really talk about it. This one, I think, I think this one was probably my second favorite besides that first one. It was really good. I loved the plotline and everything. It was great. I feel like I have to talk more about it, but I don't really, this was a while ago, so I don't remember it as well. But Terry Pratchett's writing, fucking phenomenal. Absolutely amazing. I am in love with his writing. I'm holding off from reading more more Discworld novels and more Terry Pratchett currently, because I wanted to, take a break for a little bit. But, obviously, I read 8 books and 4 of them were the rest of the Death series, so half of this video is just going to be me gushing about Terry Pratchett and his writing. Not as much as the last video, because the last video was fresh off of the first book. But, yeah. This Reaper Man, absolutely phenomenal. Loved the writing. I loved the whole, plot of Death being fired and him finding happiness and love, kind of, in a way. Love in a way. And happiness. It was a great time. I loved this book. It was amazing. 5 out of 5? 10 out of 10? I don't remember what scale I was using last time. I'm just a nerd. The next one in the Death series is Soul Music. I think... Wait, what was the other? Soul Music, I think, was my least favorite of the Death series. I just wasn't that interested in... Maybe... I know, it's kind of close between Soul Music and Hogfather, but I just wasn't really into the whole subplot of it. I mean, it was an interesting idea. I did like the whole music with Roxanne thing, and at the end, whenever I started realizing that it was the city being made was just a giant shopping mall or something. This is gonna make no sense if you haven't actually read the book, by the way. I'm just remembering the, because I read them all back to back, so obviously some of the lines are a little bit, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, some of the lines between the different storylines and, which book each of them is in kind of got mixed up for me. This is also the one where we are introduced to Susan Stohellett, or however you pronounce it, who is Death's granddaughter. Yes, very interesting family line there. But she's an interesting character. I can't say I dislike her character, but she's definitely not my favorite character. And this one focused a lot on her and her storyline, and a lot on the wizards and their storyline. And there wasn't really that much death in it, because he kind of just disappeared off the face of the earth. That's kind of the whole thing about the book, is he disappeared off the face of the earth. That actually kind of happens a lot in these books, which sucks, because he's, like, my favorite character. But, yeah, Susan, I can get into her storylines. The wizards, I do not vibe with. I don't know. They're quite interesting, but I think I'm probably not going to read their books as much, or, like, I'm not planning to go into their books as soon. I'm probably going to hold off on theirs for a while, because the wizard subplots and such just weren't vibing with me. I didn't find them as interesting. But that was Soul Music. I'd say it's probably like a 3 out of 5, 7 out of 10. Like, still above average, because I love Terry Pratchett's writing. Absolutely phenomenal writing. I just didn't like that plot as much. It was quite interesting, though. Hogfather now. That one also interesting. Hogfather. Yeah, that's Mr. Tea Time. Sorry. Again, a lot of this is going to be like, if you haven't read these books, you're probably not going to get my strange references, because I'm just remembering what I can remember from the books. Hogfather was... to be fair, this is also like a holiday book, and I read it in... was it May? April? Somewhere around there. I can't remember. Oh, it probably would have been the end of April. All I remember is that I was on a trip at this point in time when I was reading it, because I read most of it on the airplane, because I couldn't sleep even though it was an overnight flight. I cannot sleep on airplanes. And so I stayed up most of the night reading this, and it was quite interesting. So I honestly probably don't remember it that well, because I read most of it in one night on an airplane when I was sleep deprived. But it showed a good amount of the culture of this, and I love the part about Susan being able to, like, beat away the monsters, like, monsters and stuff under your bed, like, existing, but they only exist if you believe in them, and so they only exist really to children, and the children's parents don't really see them. But Susan, since she's not entirely human, since she's Death's granddaughter, and hijinks ensue, but she can see all these creatures that shouldn't exist but do exist, and beat them into submission or whatever. This book really put me more onto her character. I liked her character in this book a lot. Death taking the place of Santa Claus. When was this published? 1996. When was The Nightmare Before Christmas? I forgot, I wanted to look this up. When was that published? Or not published. Oh, 1993? Yes. Okay, so this... I don't know how long Terry wrote books. Like, I don't know how long he took writing the book before it happened. But Death taking the place of Santa, I can definitely see it being like, haha, The Nightmare Before Christmas, that kind of thing. Or it could just be entirely separate ideas that happened in a similar time frame. Because this was published in 1996. The Nightmare Before Christmas came out in 93. So, like I said, I don't know how long his process of writing a book, like coming up with the plot and writing a book and then editing and then getting published, like I don't know how long that process takes. So I don't know if 3 years makes sense for that or not. And honestly, I don't know if he even saw the movie. For all I know, he was like, I don't know. I wasn't alive. But it was, I liked this version of that a little more than, well, I can't say that I liked it more than Nightmare Before Christmas. That calendar is a Nightmare Before Christmas calendar. Like, I love Jack Skellington. But I think reading it this way with how he took over I liked it. I enjoyed it a lot more. It was pretty funny. It was pretty great. But again, I don't know if it's just because I was reading it at a not holiday time, or because I just wasn't in a great space to read and enjoy something. But it was down. I'd say like 4 out of 5. Not as good. I can literally look at what I rated this. Oh, I rated this one 5 out of 5. What did I rate the other ones? Because I forgot that I wrote them. Yeah, Reaper Man I rated 5 out of 5. I'm sure I remember that. Oh, no. I rated Soul Music also 5 out of 5. Okay, well... What did I rate Thief of Time? Also 5 out of 5. Great. I just love Terry Pratchett. But that was my personal, I think 4 out of 5 would be good for that one. Just, you know. Thief of Time, this is the last book in the Death series of Discworld. It was very interesting. It played a lot more with Susan's character, and I don't remember Death being in it a lot, actually. Oh, but this is he, like, had to gather... Okay, I remember. I remember who he kind of was. There was a lot to do with, like, not quite time travel, but playing with time, playing with the concept of time and stuff like that. It was very interesting. I liked it a lot, though. I remember the end kind of was like... The end kind of threw me off a little bit, but, you know, that happens sometimes. It was... Oh, it was only published almost 2 years before I was born. Wow, Discworld wasn't... Oh! Since that was only Discworld 26, and there's like, what, 40-something books? 41 books, I want to say? I could be wrong. There's a good chance that Discworld was still being published whenever I was born. That's fun. Interesting. I have to look into that more. Like, still, like, new books are being published, and which makes sense, I believe. Oh, the auditors, the freaking... Oh, that whole interest... I forgot that part of Thief of Time, the fucking auditors, which were showing up since, they showed up in, I believe, every book since the, Reaper Man, but I could be wrong. Actually, no, they didn't show up in Soul Music, I don't believe. No, I think they came back in Hogfather, and then Thief of Time? Or maybe they were in Soul Music, I can't remember. But they're like just these beings of pure math and logic and stuff, and they hate humans because we are the most illogical things possible. We make no sense whatsoever, and seeing in Thief of Time, some of them like start taking the forms of humans to mess with things and try to get humanity to stop existing. But then the ones that take the forms of humans actually start to enjoy experiencing existence as a human, and it's very interesting to see this like perspective of something that used to hate the idea of humanity starting to like fall in love with being human. It's so fun. Oh, it's great. Oh, Mr. Soak. But I gotta move on from Discworld. Hello. I gotta move on from Discworld because I love that series. I can't wait to go back to it. I'm probably going to order more Discworld books as soon as we move, because I can't order anything until we move, because we're literally moving in like a week. But now I've had a sufficient amount of time to read other books. I can read some Discworld. But the next one I went into, I believe... Is it raining? No. I don't think this was quite... I don't think it was quite Pride Month yet, but I still wanted to, like, get into reading some queer books for Pride Month. So the next one I read was called Once in Future by A.R. Capetta. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I'm sorry. It's a King Arthur retelling, except King Arthur is a chick, and she's also a lesbian, and also it's the future, and we're in space, and also Merlin is the same dude. Like, she's a reincarnation of King Arthur, and all her friends and family are like reincarnations of different people from King Arthur's story. But Merlin's the same dude. It's just in between each reincarnation of King Arthur, he goes into his cave and falls asleep and ages backwards. So he's like a squeaky teen. And he's also gay. It's a great time. There's a canonical they, them. I loved the representation in this book. I definitely have had this sitting on my shelf for a while because at the very end of the book it has like a preview for the sequel and it says coming in 2020, which was 3 years ago. So I've definitely had this book for a while, just sitting on my shelf. So now I have to get the sequel because I loved this book. It was great. It was great. The pacing was off a little bit. But, I don't know, does this author... I don't know how many other books... Oh. Never mind, it looks like this, I was gonna say, it looks like this author... Oh, wait. Published in 2015. No. So this author has published other things. I felt like the pacing was off in the book. It kind of, like... There was a lot of setup. And then... A lot of things happened at once. And then there was a time skip of, like, a year. My camera's being funky. Is my phone not charging properly? It is. Okay. There's a time skip of, like, a year, and then a bunch of shit happens. And then it's the end of the book. I feel like it probably would have been better if this was, instead of being one big book and then whatever the sequel is, if this book had been, like, expanded a bit and then maybe split into two where the time skip is. I feel like that could have been a better pacing-wise. Because it felt like there was a whole story in the first part. And then it could have been this great cliffhanger. But instead it was just like, oh, your time skip. Here's what happened next. And it kind of felt like an entirely separate story in the second half. And it felt extremely rushed after the time skip. So... Oh, my throat's getting dry. 1 second. So yeah, I definitely feel like it could have been better if it had been split up a little bit more. But I did enjoy the story for what it was. I enjoyed the universe that this person is creating. And I can't wait to get the second one and read that one. On to the 6th book. This is How You Lose the Time War by Amal El-Motar and Max Gladstone. Oh wait, the last one had 2, didn't it? Yeah, it was A.R. Capetta and Corey McCarthy. Oopsies. This one very recently started getting press and stuff. I think because that one person like tweeted about it on Twitter or something. But I heard of this because I was hosting a Tumblr poll for most homoerotic enemies that I did not end up finishing. Because I had a lot of stuff going on and whatever. That's not what this is about. But the red and blue from This Is How You Lose the Time War were heavily requested to be put into the bracket, and so they were, and that's when I was like, hey, I should read this. And I did, and it was great. This one, beautiful prose. The time travel and the chasing after each other, like red and blue are always chasing after each other. They always have, like, they're always one step ahead of each other, and then, like, blue's always one step ahead, I believe. Blue is definitely always, like, one step ahead of red. Sometimes red catches up, but just this playful back and forth, and it's the enemies at first, and then they're kind of like, hey, wait, snowballing into what are we even fighting for if not each other? And this whole, like, there's a whole, I don't really want to give too much away, but there's like overarching thread that comes through at the end and it pulls it perfectly together. And I was like, oh my god. Oh my god. How fast did I read this? I want to say I read it in like 3 days. 5 days. 5 days. I'm giving myself too much credit. I'm struggling. Yeah, I'm giving myself too much credit. It was 5 days. But it was amazing. And the letters back and forth and the time travel. I'm not a very smart person. Let's preface this with that. I'm not a very smart person, but the way the intricacies of time travel in this book were fucking amazing. Going up thread and the down thread and all the different threads like pulling together, like the infinite possibilities, but you have to tweak them just the right way to make the perfect outcome in the future where they belong. But it's always constantly shifting, and so both of their futures do exist, but the whole war is about making like one gone forever or something, I guess. But they're like, oh, in the end when, this book was amazing. I love this book. I think this is probably going to end up being a yearly read. Maybe not yearly, maybe every other year, but it's definitely going to come back into my roster because I'm obsessed with this. Or I was obsessed with this. It was great. Ugh. And now on to the 7th book. This is actually one that I did reread. I read it for the first time last year. It is Carry On by Rainbow Rowell, the first of the Simon Snow trilogy. I only had the first book last year, and so I read it, and I immediately fell in love with this entire thing, with Simon Snow, and with the whole universe. It's everything nostalgic to me about Harry Potter, because I've always been a literature nerd. Of course I would read Harry Potter when I was younger. I still have the books somewhere. Like, J.K. Rowling is a piece of shit, but it's still a part of my childhood, But it took all, like, the wizarding school and the wizardry and this poor orphan boy who thought he had nothing, who's given everything, who is the chosen one. Like, it takes everything nostalgic about that story and wraps it up into this big queer gift. It reads like fan fiction because canonically, there's a whole thing with their other book, with Rainbow Rowell's other book, Fangirl, where this is the fan fiction that the fangirl is writing. The fan fiction is this Carry On, so it reads like a fan fiction because I believe it's supposed to be wrote that way, and I love it. I'm living for it. They were roommates, and he's a vampire, and the way they just, like, their enemy is so much in the beginning, and then that passion immediately ignites into romance. This book is amazing. This is one of my favorite books, I believe. And I feel like I say that a lot. Like, I kind of would say that about This Is How You Lose the Time War, but I'm also saying that about this. Like, I love books. And when I love something, I love it a lot. But Carry On, fucking amazing book. I'm obsessed with it. I've also said that about, like, multiple things in this video. I'm a nerd. Absolutely phenomenal book. However, Wayward Son, the second book in the series, it's also the shortest one. I think it's like, I finished this one a few days ago. Wayward Son I finished a few days ago, as of recording this video. Or like, maybe a week ago? I don't remember quite. But as of recording this video, I am about halfway into the third book, which I'm not going to discuss because that's not what, it's July, so it's the wrong month. But about halfway into the third book is about as long as Wayward Son is. Like, it's about half the size of the third book, which the third book is longer than the first one. But it's very short, and it is equally not great. I did not like this one a lot. I liked the setup. Simon Snow coming from his, like, perfect, exalted, chosen oneness, and then being told he's this great, amazing thing, and then not having anywhere to go after that, being burnt out. That resonated with me. I'm a former gifted kid. I have that imposter syndrome from that. I have burnt out, and I am not living up to what people believed I should have been. And I'm perfectly fine where I am now. But it definitely hit me harder, like, in the first amount of time. That part I definitely liked in this. The whole thing about this is that it's a bunch of British kids, or not a bunch, 3 British kids going on this American field trip, and then hijinks ensue because of course they do. I don't know. Maybe it's because they only were on the side of America that I've only been to a handful of times, like twice. Because they were all like mostly West Coast, like mid-America West Coast, and I've only been out there like twice, so I don't know. I didn't vibe with that part as much. Because it was very setting heavy because it's a road trip kind of thing. I also just didn't enjoy this one much. It felt like everything that I loved about Simon and Baz's relationship in the first one was like utterly ripped to shreds in this one. They barely know where they stand with each other. It's all angsty and stuff, and there's only a few moments of reprieve from the angstiness. And I didn't like that as much, but I can promise that it's getting better in the third one, so I can give it a little bit of slack. I also believe it's an issue of, I'm pretty sure the first book was only meant to be a one-off, and so I've seen this in at least one other series that I love, where it was originally supposed to be a one-off book, and then it went out to be a series of like 4 or 5 books. And the second book is the worst one, because they have to take this perfectly wrapped up plot, tied up with a bow, and stab it, and make like 10 more plot lines out of it, to make it keep going. And the second one is like, oh shit, I have to actually expand more upon this world that I created for one specific story. And I have to keep it going, and the second one just doesn't end up as good, because it's like driving into the new plot for future books. I don't know. But yeah, that one, not as great. I gave up on my star rating like a while ago, so like half the books ago, so I can't even, like, but I definitely think this was not the great, like, Wayward Son was not the greatest one. If it wasn't for the fact that it's in the middle of a series that I love the other 2 books of, I probably wouldn't want to keep it on my shelf. But because it's sandwiched in between 2 books that I love, I think I can deal with it not being as great for the sake of the books that I love. But because the end definitely just rolls into the plot for the next book. Excuse me. The end definitely just slides into the plot, so it definitely was made to be like, oh shit, I wrapped up the story, I need to have like this next plot coming so that I can get to the end of the new end of the story. And it works in that regard. It just isn't great by itself, and it's definitely a lower caliber than the first and third novels in this series. But that is all the time that I have for you today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please make sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And I will be back with another breeding update in 3-ish months. Probably a little sooner, because I definitely pushed this off until, like, last minute. Bye!